I know you have a great session. In fact, you actually set the stage for all of us. So Dr. Henry will be, Dr. Henry Yeoh is the Deputy President of the Malaysian Institute of Human Resource Management. He's also in a panel of the World Congress. If you want to win a HR award internationally, he sits in one of those panels. So be nice to him. Buy him a coffee. I'm kidding. But he's a very humble person, amazing for being so senior, super humble. Henry Yeoh, you can share your PowerPoint. Go right ahead.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Robert. And
you unmute everybody, okay? Everybody gets unmute except me and Henry.
Okay. So thank you, Robert, for the introduction and a very warm welcome to everyone. I'm so happy.
How do I highlight you? Wait. How do I highlight you?
Highlight me? No need lah. It's okay. Right.
No need lah. So you just share screen only, right?
Yeah. Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. All right. So this morning, I just want to quickly give an overview of how the COVID situation has impacted literally everybody. Or I think no one is actually immune. Of course, some industries, some organizations have benefited much more compared to others, but I believe those industries or businesses are more of an exception rather than norm, right? So given my background, my forte, my context sharing will be more from the HR practice, but it also equally apply to individuals who are people leaders or who are people managers in their respective organization. So I've entitled my team in sharing to everyone. It is how we can actually forge ahead in a new normal and more contextually centric towards the CHRO 4.0 is if you are in the HR practice domain, would you want to evolve into being a HR futurist, all right? So my agenda this morning, all right, sharing with you will be just basically giving an overview of how COVID has impacted everybody, some key insights, and if there is time, subject to Robert's agreement, then we may have a bit of a Q&A later on. So first off, I guess everyone is fully aware now. As long as the COVID cases goes up, right, it has an inverse relationship to the economy, right? So that's why you can see all the governments around the world are actually fighting very hard to flatten the curve so that the economy can actually be jump-started and go into a recovery phase, right? And we are seeing some signs of progress, but it still looks like it's a bit of a yo-yo kind of a situation. So if you want to imagine or visualize the magnitude of COVID, right, and I kind of just now frame it in this context, it is probably a far bigger crisis faced by everybody, you know, even when we combine SARS and the Asian financial crisis. The damage it causes to businesses and to individuals ranges from things like getting countries into a recession, massive job losses, mental health at an unprecedented level, you know, and what it probably affects is redefining the future of work and probably the way we consume as well. So these are the things that have come about because of the COVID situation that we are facing presently. So if you look at some of the industries that perhaps are more badly affected are the airline industry. We have seen some which have totally gone into a total collapse, you know, and others are trying to do whatever is necessary to sustain their operations. And regardless of the size and your reputation in the airline industry, COVID is no, how should I say, it does not recognize individuals or businesses who are either big or small. And even for organizations who are once, considered the rich and the powerful, are also at the mercies of the COVID situation and the kind of damage that it has caused is really unplanned, unanticipated, and many organizations are actually struggling to how can they turn around, how can they restructure, and how can they actually be optimistic, be positive, and see what are the opportunities that they can actually grab hold of. In terms of employment, I think for Malaysia in particular, we have seen one of the highest unemployment rate in the second quarter of this year, 2020. And though the unemployment rate has slightly dipped, but nonetheless, it's still a bit too early to say whether will the decline in unemployment be going towards a positive trend or not. But as is, I think things are still very fluid. And as long as the restricted control, movement control is still on, and if, let's say, if there's this CMCO gets extended, I think businesses are likely to continue to suffer. And as a result, this may even lead to a higher unemployment or job losses than anticipated. So this is an extract from some of the findings by Mercer, and they have about close to, when they did this survey, the number of organizations that they reach out to was more than 500, and in terms of their respondents, it's looking at about close to 170 over 1,000, right? So, and what was some of these findings from the survey conducted by Mercer, which was only released in November of this year? First and foremost, they look at what governments are doing, and particularly in the Malaysian government. We have instituted movement control, the CMCO, the RMCO, and so on. They have put in place active contact tracing using the MIHRM app. They have launched and introduced quite a fair bit of financial assistance scheme to help, especially the SMEs, to be able to not go into total liquidation or bankruptcy, and regular communications from the respective agencies, particularly from our Ministry of Health. Insofar as organizations, how have they responded to the COVID situation? Remote working or working from home, all of a sudden became the new normal, and this has also caused quite a fair bit of stress and challenges for both the employers as well as the employees. Financial assistance, where companies who are in a better financial position, they strive to offer as much help as possible to their affected employees. And there's also increased communication from the management to the employees, particularly in terms of trying to understand and how to elevate their employees' well-being and also their mental health. And use of technology, of course, have seen a fairly marked increase, even in the smaller organization, which traditionally tends to be a bit more manual and transactional, but they have now realized that they actually need to adopt digital technologies to help their businesses as well as their employees to cope much more efficiently and effectively. And insofar as how has this COVID situation impacted employees, of course, a very high percentage of employees are very concerned about work-life balance, because in reality, working from home seems to have resulted in people working much more longer and work-life balance seems to have gone out of the window. And there's this fear of job security because they are also not sure, right? How long will the situation last, and whether are the employers and the organization able to sustain the business and as a result, getting to keep their jobs, right? So these are real fears of many employees throughout the region, and which cuts or have definitely been one of the more serious financial consequences that many employees have faced in view of the situation that they are currently in. So some of the three key insights which I would like to share with everyone this morning is looking at how, especially from the HR perspective, are they able to partner with their key stakeholders in terms of damage control, put in place a more robust working from home so that their employees especially can be much more ready and efficient and productive even while they may not be physically working in the office. And the third insight will be looking into the performance calibration and what the management especially needs to consider so that the expectation can still be fairly met and satisfied by all parties concerned. So when we look at damage control and assessment, I believe the more senior leaders in the organization, be it HR or from the other business function, must be sensitive to understand the revenue, their profit position in their own respective organization, how, and if let's say their businesses have back order, right? How can they still do their level best to ensure that the back order don't really get too much of a backlog? And I'm sure if you have, especially in the Malaysian context, you have been reading in the news lately, even our post-Malaysia, which is supposedly to be a fairly efficient machinery, got a lot of negative complaints from their customers because they are not receiving their parcels or their consignments on a timely manner. So there's a huge backlog even in organization like Post Malaysia. And then of course the businesses will still need to be able to serve their customers well, and to retain their customers and not lose especially their key customers. And last but not least is talking about the employee safety and mental health. And because if this employees' mental health are not well addressed and shown to be of high importance to the employers, right? The consequences can be far more damaging than actually anticipated. So if we look at what are the possible consequences that employers perhaps may want to be aware of, is that if they say there are elective surgeries that their employees actually will need to undergo before the COVID, these elective surgeries are likely to be, how should I say, to be scheduled once the COVID situation have stabilized. So, and this is something that may have an impact both in terms of your manpower planning as well as on the healthcare system as well. Critical illness may become much more obvious if arising from either the lack of sufficient healthcare and treatment because of the restriction, control movement, and so on. The impact of working from home, we are likely to see employees utilizing EAP programs which are offered by their employers particularly where it comes to mental health issue as well as musculoskeletal disorders, because one thing that we probably have learned and discovered that not all employees working from home have the adequate equipment to really work ergonomically and safely in their respective homes. And the other consideration is, of course, employers will still need to be on guard in terms of the ensuring that the employees are safe even if when they are returning back to their offices to work, by implementing the sanitation requirements, as well as providing PPE or personal protection equipment where necessary, right? So that the COVID situation will be well contained and under control. So this is a survey which was done by the STAR, and when they surveyed, the CEOs and business owners, what are their priorities, after MCO. If you look at the top three, right, the one that strike out almost outstanding, and which I say this could be a huge area of potential and opportunities, is that many of the traditional business owners feel that they actually will need to have a serious relook in changing their business model to be much more, how should I say, sustainable and be able to withstand future crisis if, touch wood, if there is another kind of a similar case, right? And e-commerce is very high. So, and this, I believe, where Faris later on will be able to share how traditional business model, right, can pivot or transition from their brick and mortar model into the digital platform or the e-commerce platform, right? Other things will be, of course, they need to be more careful on credit control, because now they realize, right, in times of crisis like this, having a very, very sustainable cash flow is actually very, very important. And the computerization of their work processes is also a fairly high priority as well. So working from home, right, so-called the new normal, right, and this is just to share some thoughts on it, right. So if it's going to be a new normal, right, and it is going to be, let's say, configured and put in place, so the new protocol of so-called working from home will actually have to be very, very clearly and defined, so that employees in the future who are required to be working from home will have a clear understanding what will be the scope and the coverage as well. And of course, even as it is sounds easy, work from home, but there are specific skills that actually need to be instituted or to be imparted to their employees, so that they are adequately equipped. And I believe this is where Steve will be able to share how employers together with their HR stakeholders or even the heads of department need to really look at in terms of reskilling or upskilling in the proper manner, so that the employees can be sufficiently and adequately equipped to manage more productively and working from home. And last but not least, one area observation when talking to some of my associates and as well as some of the business owners is, when working from home, who actually has the final oversight? Is it HR? Is it the CEO? Is it the heads of department? Because there seems to be quite a fair bit of confusion, especially at the receiving end of the employees. In all scenarios possible, they are actually receiving multiple instruction from multiple sources, and this can actually further add on to the stress level of employees if if there is no clarity actually who has oversight in terms of their working from home kind of routine, right? And where does HR actually comes in, when it comes to working from home, right? So if we look at this data or statistics, right, one can definitely come to the conclusion, right, prior to COVID situation, of course, the traditional methodology of working is still at an office or at a physical location, but that has definitely shifted and projecting towards the future. It looks like working from home or remote working is likely going to be fairly permanent, right? And if this is going to be so, right, how can both the employees, the managers, and HR, for example, work out something that is sustainable, that is doable, and without a lot of changes. And this will give employees that certain degree of certainty when it comes to working from home, and not to be overwhelmed with constant communication with regard to changes and so on, right? So, and of course, as earlier mentioned, while working from home initially may seems to be something, a very welcome thing, a very look forward change, of work lifestyle by many employees. But 8 months into working from home, many people realize that it is not as pleasant as it rightly should be, right? Because that people are falling ill or incurring or health condition such as body ache, disrupted sleep patterns, and a few more others, right? So all these symptoms are starting to appear, especially from employees who have been kind of pushed into the working from home without much preparation, as well as also in terms of skills and knowledge how to work effectively in terms of remote working. And an area of really grave concern to many people, right, including employers as well as governmental agencies, is the rapid increase in terms of mental health issue, and they are also recording spikes in suicide or attempted suicide. Though sadly, there's a tragic case of a success of a suicide that actually took place due to a pilot losing his job with an airline. So these are potential consequences or consequences that the employers, the more caring employers, will actually need to keep a constant lookout for. Because among the many illnesses, right, mental health is somehow still considered a subject matter that not many people actually feel comfortable to talk to people. I mean, people are fairly okay, to talk about their diabetic condition, their hypertension condition, their cholesterol level, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to mental health, it seems to be a subject matter that is really not easy for anyone to openly confide in people, because there's still this very, very bias stigma, attached to mental health issue. And therefore, people who are in a more senior leadership position needs to understand this and be more vigilant and sensitive to observe if there's any change of behavior in their employees. So and from the statistics here, the mental health is not only confined to Asian countries. If you look at some of the statistics, even in very developed and advanced economies like the US and Canada, mental health is actually quite high, in terms of what they are experiencing as well. So here again, it's just not only confined to developing countries, advanced economies which supposedly to have very sophisticated support system are still very vulnerable to mental health issues, right? And therefore, one of the training that I feel is important is for, especially for managers and leaders in organization, to be adequately equipped to handle mental health kind of issues as well, that are likely to occur from their employees. So some of the consideration working from home would be perhaps there need to be a better clarity, a better framework in terms of hours of work per week, and whether the benefits can be reconfigured so that those who are required to work from home will be able to receive some kind of subsidy, because definitely when they are at home, they tend to incur a higher usage in terms of their electricity, their broadband, and then we all know, right, that when we have poor internet connectivity, working from home can actually be very frustrating and very disrupting as well. And for those employees who may not have that kind of in that very good financial position to buy new equipment, to buy more the modern devices, the employer should perhaps look into either supplying or grant some kind of a loan or equipment loan scheme so that their employees can have access to better equipment, all right? And then when it comes to monitoring of performance and productivity, there's this question of should managers be micromanaging or should they be micro monitoring? Which one works for them, right? And last but not least, I would say data security and cybersecurity is actually very important because in many of the cybersecurity conferences and seminars that I've attended, many employees especially are not really literate about the need of data security or cybersecurity when actually working from home. So that there need to be this area of training to their employees so that their organization or their company data, especially sensitive and confidential data, are not compromised or hacked into by hackers and other unwanted parties. So the last insight, given the very limited time that I have, is actually looking at performance recalibration to match expectation. And then here, what we are also seeing from many organizations, they have actually started to rework in terms of their performance key results, from long-term strategies into more short-term tactical. And business owners and leaders are definitely encouraged to balance empathy with business continuity, and hopefully, their performance management, right, in terms of their KPAs and their KPIs is better reflected given the very challenging condition that they are actually operating in. And this actually needs to be done so that the employee motivation and engagement can still remain high, and employees are not demotivated or demoralized if employees are still not changing or not balancing their performance measure, because I think if that is not done, many employees are likely not able to meet the required KPA and KPI before COVID situation. So when it comes to KPAs and the objective and key results, right? That both the business owners, you know, the senior management as well as HR will actually have to review what they have done before, at the beginning of the year, and what needs to be done, because we are coming towards the year end, right? What are the amendments that they are going to make, so that at least is able to meet the employees' expectation that their performances are still relatively on track and not really be totally off course, so as to still receive some form of recognition and appreciation from their management and their bosses, you know, for their efforts that they've actually put in during these difficult times. So because if this is not done well, and employees at the end of the day feel that, you know, that their employers or their bosses have not been fair to them, are likely to look at leaving the organization, and employee turnover can be a very costly financial outcome for them later on, if those people who leave them are actually key talents, right? So so this is something that the employees and management needs to be aware of, to minimize this kind of impact or damage in terms of their talent management kind of initiative. So coming to the HR 4.0, CHRO 4.0 as the HR futurist, it is worthwhile to know that the coronavirus pandemic has actually been a defining moment in an employee's career as well as their life journey, right? So how bosses, you know, how the senior leaders respond are likely going to have either a positive or negative lasting impact on employee behavior in terms of their engagement, which will influence their productivity and continual commitment to their organization. So as the emerging HR futurists, these are the 4 questions that perhaps the HR practitioners or the strategic people leaders will have to contend with, is examining how has COVID-19 situation changed the way that people and the organization approaches well-being at work, right? Is there real agility and be able to adapt into the new normal of working from home, right? Of course, the second question will be, will the remote workplace replace the physical one, and how should organization pivot, and what are the implications of this shift to hybrid working, right? And the third question will be, is HR and stakeholders' mindset shifting from impossible to possible? Because for so long a time that we have been so accustomed to the traditional so-called understanding of work, and now moving into this new kind of new normal of work, are our mindset shifting fast enough or quick enough to recognize and to adapt it comfortably into this new work requirements? And looking at how digital is going to become a way of life and a way of work, right? So is HR in a good position to navigate stakeholders and employees moving into a digital future, and of course need to show results and ROI in building the employer brand, redesigning the employee experience and other areas of business? So the agenda for HR today and beyond have definitely expanded beyond the traditional scope, right? Particularly, I'd like to focus on point 8, 9, and 10, because this is where your strategic value to your stakeholders, to your organization actually becomes much more valued and visible, right? Are the people leaders, right, able to work hand in hand with their business owners to prioritize the needs of the business, to reshape the organization, and to build up virtual management and digital competencies so that their business can become more efficient and productive as well. And coming out of the COVID-19 situation, right? If one aspires to be a HR futurist, you know, in the context of a CHRO 4.0 framework, this will be some of the much needed skills or competencies, right? Of course, agility and resilience is highly important. The ability to unlearn and relearn, I think, is even much more talked about today, because if one has been, let's say, working for 10, 15 years, right, and to unlearn what you have learned over the last 10, 15 years is not an easy thing to do. And the ability to relearn is also can be quite challenging for many people. So hopefully Steve will be able to cover that as well. Accelerated technology adoption is definitely a must, looking at how digital can actually help to maintain and even to grow your market share. Your leaders and managers needs to be much more emotionally intelligent. Are you now looking at boosting your EQ leadership compared to IQ? If one has to be from the traditional model that we tend to look at IQ rather than EQ, but the shift is now moving towards EQ and perhaps even CQ, or what I call the cultural intelligence as well. And the future and nature of work will definitely requires a close examination so that you can prepare your workforce and your organization business model towards this direction. And last but not least, be able to keep a close eye on the mental and emotional health of your people. Because end of day, right, it's not so much of your product, your technology, your infrastructure, right? It's your people that powers your organization to greatness and success. And if you are not paying enough attention to this area of your employees, then likely as a business owner, right, you are going to suffer quite badly because of that. So from lockdown to unlock, right, as we look forward to that day, the coronavirus pandemic has actually thrown up a lot of serious staffing challenges, right? And this has actually put the HR practitioners into the forefront, into the center of the crisis. So at the end of the day, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. Borrowing a quote from Zig Ziglar. So especially those who are in the people leadership position, this is your time to shine, and how you are able to prepare yourself to adapt yourself and your organization for the post-COVID-19 reality will definitely give you an upper advantage or a competitive advantage over others as well. Right? So with that, thank you